The God Killer Initiative high above the crimson clouds of planet Arcus 7. The massive orbital foundry, Aegis Ford, hovered like a silent sentinel. Within its gleaming halls, engineers and scientists labored day and night under the direction of Director Max Rowan, a stern man whose ambition matched the size of the weapon he had vowed to perfect. Rumors whispered through the corridors. This weapon would do the impossible. It would slay gods. Max stood before a hollow display of the prototype, its surface etched with glowing runes drawn from ancient mythologies. He tapped the command, and the weapon's core pulsed with raw energy. It was powered by a rare element harvested from dying stars, capable of ripping open divine auras. Around him, his team led by the brilliant but cautious engineer Nora Vance. Each test brought them closer to breaking the barrier between mortals and deities. But not everyone shared Max's fervor. In the foundry's lower decks, technician Ian Cruz studied the displacement readings on his console. He felt a chill as he watched energy levels climb beyond predicted safety margins. "This is unstable," he cautioned Nora in a hushed tone. She nodded, her brow furrowed. "Max won't listen," she whispered. "He thinks we're on the verge of rewriting history." Ian's hands trembled as he adjusted a calibration knob. The instrument's hum suddenly spiked, sending a tremor through the deck plates. Across the foundry, whispers of divine retribution grew louder. Some apprentices refused their shifts, fearing curses or omens. Others claimed to see flickers of light dancing at the edge of their vision shadows of gods watching from another plane. Max dismissed these theories as superstition. He believed that by engineering a weapon to slay gods, his people would ensure their security and ascend to the next level of existence. "We'll be remembered as liberators," he declared in a briefing, "not as heretics." Meanwhile, deep in the council chambers of the Interstellar Alliance, debate raged over Aegis Forge's progress. Counselor Eva Tran argued that no race had the right to murder a god, no matter how distant. She pleaded for a diplomatic envoy to engage with the godlike beings rather than threaten them. But Counselor Tarek Holt Max's political sponsor countered fiercely. "They watch us like insects. If gods exist, they are predators. We must prove we can fight back." The vote tilted in Tarek's favor, greenlighting full-scale production. Back on the foundry, the first complete god killer stood on its launch rail, gleaming black and silver. Its name, Deicide 1, carved in the vessel's hull, sent a shiver through every crew member who read it. Max walked beneath the weapon, his pride mixed with an odd pang of doubt. Would they truly pull the trigger? Could mortals wield such power without destroying themselves? He shook off the thought and ordered the final systems check. Every light turned green. The weapon was ready. As the crew braced for the inaugural test, an energy discharge into the void beyond, alarms suddenly rang out. A small shuttle had docked unexpectedly. Security protocols flared to life. Through the viewport, Max saw a lone figure step onto the platform, a human in simple gray fatigues, unarmed, staring directly at him. In that moment, the foundry seemed to hold its breath. The God Killer Initiative had met the one being no one expected, and everything changed. Asterisk, the stranger's warning, the alarms echoed through Aegis Forge as the lone human stepped off the shuttle. He moved with calm purpose, hands open to show he carried no weapon. Director Max Rowan strode forward, his boots clanging on metal grating. Around him, soldiers with pulse rifles trained their sights on the visitor. "State your name." "And business," Max demanded, voice cold. The human nodded once. "My name is Alex Reed. I come from Earth." A murmur ran through the assembled crew. Earth was a myth to most, a legend whispered across the stars. Alex held Max's gaze without fear. Nora Vance pushed past Ian Cruz to stand near Max. She studied Alex with keen eyes. "How did you reach us?" she asked. Alex allowed a faint smile. "I found an unstable wormhole near Jupiter's moon Callisto," he explained. "It led me here. I suspected your project would draw me." A soldier snorted. or you're a spy. Alex raised a wrist sleeve and projected a hollow emblem of the United Earth Council. The emblem glowed blue and silver, an earth eagle over. A stylized globe. This is my commission, he said. I'm a special envoy. I carry a message you must hear. Max stepped closer, scanning the hollow emblem. Your council endorsed our project? He asked. Alex shook his head. They did not. They don't even know it's underway. What you build here threatens the balance of all cosmic powers. Behind Alex, faint lights flickered power conduits struggling under the strain of deicide. One's core. Nora's brow furrowed. Are you saying gods exist? Alex's expression grew grave. Yes, they are ancient, beyond human comprehension. They forged the first stars and still shape reality. Your weapon could kill one butt. The blast would ripple through the veil between worlds. It could destroy your foundry, or collapse your entire star system. Ian Cruz swallowed hard. He glanced at the core monitors. Fluctuations were rising again. We've seen the readings, he whispered to Nora. I tried to warn Max, but he said only results matter. Nora pressed a hand to her mouth. This is worse than we feared. Max's eyes narrowed. Why should we believe you? You offer no proof. Alex reached into a satchel at his belt and withdrew a small crystal orb. It rippled with light, showing images of towering gray figures drifting through space gods in amorphous form. I took this from a dying temple on Gethin 9, Alex said. It's a record of their existence and their anger at mortal defiance. He activated the orb. Holographic shapes flickered above the group, a being of fractal light, another of silent shadow. Each figure pulsed with power that seemed to warp the air. Soldiers stumbled back. Max staggered, his certainty shaken. This cannot be real, he muttered. Alex continued softly. When I studied your design specifications, I realized the weapon's energy signature matches the core of a prime god. You plan to strike at the heart of one of these beings. They will retaliate? The orb's images shifted, worlds collapsing, stars imploding, cosmic storms engulfing fleets. A low hum filled the chamber as the foundry's power grid overloaded. Ian shouted, Core breach. Red lights flashed. Alarms blared louder. Nora grabbed Alex's arm. We need to shut it down. Alex nodded and sprinted toward the control console. Max hesitated, torn between ambition and fear. Stop him. Max barked. Soldiers raised weapons. But Alex pressed a finger to a sensor on the console, bypassing security protocols. The massive power flow reversed, and Deicide 1's core began to dim. Panels hissed as coolant flooded the energy conduits. The threat of an uncontrolled discharge receded. Max stood frozen, watching the weapon lose its lethal glow. Why save? US? He demanded. Alex turned Asterisk steady. Because humanity learns from mistakes. You still can choose differently. Nora exhaled in relief. Ian's shoulders slumped. Even Tarek Holt's liaison officer lowered his rifle. In the sudden hush. The orb's images faded, but the warning remained vivid in every mind. Max's jaw clenched as he stared at Alex. I will consider what you've shown me, he said at last, voice tight. Alex nodded and pocketed the orb. I trust you will. As Alex was escorted to a secure chamber, Max surveyed the shaken crew. The God Killer Initiative had survived its first true test, not of firepower, but of conscience. Somewhere in the darkness beyond, the gods watched. And now, so did humanity's best hope for peace. Asterisk the dilemma. The next few hours passed. An uneasy silence. Max Rowan paced in his office, reviewing Alex Reed's warning over and over again. The data from the orb was indisputable. The energy signature from Deicide 1 was a match for one of the gods' essence. The implications were staggering. Had the Alliance truly underestimated the forces they were trying to harness? Outside his office, the hum of Aegis Forge's massive engines continued. The foundry never slept, but tonight it felt as if the entire complex was holding its breath. Nora Vance sat at her desk, reviewing the weapon's schematics, but her mind kept wandering back to the images she had seen. Gods, were they real, Or was Alex Reed simply a clever messenger trying to derail the most ambitious project in Galactic? History? Max strode past her office, pausing at the threshold. Nora, I need your thoughts on Reed. Do you think he's telling the truth? Nora didn't immediately answer. She stared at the schematics, eyes tracing the lines of deicide ones. Complex designs. I don't know, Max, she said finally, her voice low. He made a lot of sense, and the energy readings we've been getting, those can't be ignored. If his warning is true, we're playing with forces we don't understand. Max clenched his fists. If we stop now, everything we've worked for, everything we've built, it's for nothing. He turned toward the viewport, looking out at the stars. And what about the gods he spoke of? Do we cower in fear, knowing they could destroy us at any moment? Or do we finally take control? Nora stood and crossed the room, placing a hand on Max's shoulder. But is this the price we should pay, Max? Can we really justify threatening their existence for our own survival? Max didn't respond immediately. He turned back toward the hollow display, where Deicide One's design stood in stark contrast to the peaceful starry void outside. His gaze hardened. We don't have a choice. We must have an answer. We can't afford weakness. Meanwhile, Alex Reed sat alone in the holding cell provided for him, a simple, sterile room devoid of windows. His hands were cuffed, but there was no fear in his eyes. He had done what he came to do. The warning had been sent. The rest was up. To humanity. He had seen the dangers that awaited them if they chose the path of destruction. But he also understood why they would do it. Power, after all, was an intoxicating thing. He had heard the stories of Earth's struggle to survive in a harsh galaxy. That fight had forged his people into something resilient, something strong. But now it was time for them to learn that some battles were best left unchallenged. In the silence of his cell, he reflected on the choices ahead. He had done his duty. Now he could only hope humanity would find its way. Back in the control room of the Foundry, the decision had to be made. Max, Nora, and Eon gathered in dense meeting along with the political liaison. Tarek Holt, who had remained largely silent up until now. It's time to decide, Max said, his voice taut with emotion. The core is stable again, but Reed's words have made us doubt everything we've built. What do we do now? Tarek was the first to speak. We can't back down now. We've invested too much. The galaxy has always feared us, and it's time we showed them why. If we hesitate, we risk being crushed by those who see us as weak. Nora shook her head. Tarek, you're forgetting the bigger picture. If we use Deicide One, we might just provoke something we're not prepared for. The consequences could be catastrophic. I've seen the readings. This weapon could tear apart the fabric of space itself. But what if we're not ready to stop? Max countered, his eyes darkening, with resolve. We've been on the verge of this breakthrough for years. To step back now would mean admitting we're inferior, that we can't handle the power we've created. We'll be at the mercy of the gods, just like Alex said. Ian Cruz spoke up quietly. But what if Alex is right? What if we destroy everything in our pursuit of power? Max's eyes flickered, his face torn between ambition and the overwhelming weight of responsibility. He turned back to the holographic projection of Deicide One. I never wanted to destroy, but I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to ensure that we never had to fear anyone again. Nora walked closer, her voice firm but calm. Sometimes power is not the answer. It's how you use it that matters. We could still stop this, Max. It's not too late. Max stood in silence for a long moment, weighing the lives that had been sacrificed for this moment, the hundreds of thousands who would be affected by the decision. Then, slowly, he turned back to the team. Prepare the weapon for testing. As the crew went to work, preparing for what might be the final test of Deicide One, Alex Reed sat silently in his cell, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what was to come. He had warned them, but the temptation of power was too great. Out in the vast reaches of space, gods watched silently. And somewhere, deep within the unexplored galaxies, they stirred in response to the first tremor in the cosmic balance. And so, humanity stood on the edge, about to make a choice that would shape the future of the galaxy forever. Would they slay gods and take their place, or would they recognize the danger of their actions before it was too late? Asterisk the first test, the heavy metallic doors of Aegis Forge's central chamber slid open, revealing the darkened control room. Max Rowan stood at the front, his back straight as he faced the rows of technicians and engineers. The room was filled with a tense silence, the weight of the moment hanging like a storm cloud overhead. Behind him, the gleaming form of Deicide. One stood on his launch rail, poised and ready for the test that could change the fate of the galaxy. Max's eyes flickered to Nora Vance, standing by his side. She looked as though she might speak, but no words came. The uncertainty hung between them, unspoken. Nora had been right all along. This weapon had the potential to bring about the destruction of not just gods, but everything in its path. But Max had made up his mind. There was no turning back. We launch in 5 minutes, Max said, his voice cold and firm. Prepare all systems. The test must proceed. Nora hesitated but nodded, stepping forward to relay the orders. All teams prepare for activation. Check all systems. No mistakes. The crew moved with mechanical precision, hands flying over controls as they worked to power up Deicide 1. Max watched them work, his mind racing with thoughts of Alex Reed's warning. But the path ahead was clear. He had already chosen it. There was no time to reconsider. The weapon's core came online, humming with energy as the raw power of the weapon pulsed. Ian Cruz, stationed at the console, frowned as the energy readings spiked. Max, the readings are higher than expected. The weapon is drawing more power than we calculated. Max's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away from the control panel. We will adjust. Prepare the launch sequence. His voice was a quiet command. Nora glanced over at Ian, her concern evident. How much more power, Ian? Ian ran calculations. Rapidly, eyes wide with alarm. It's a significant increase. If this goes beyond the limit, we could just do it, Max snapped. He could feel the weight of the crew's eyes on him, their loyalty shifting, uncertain. No one dared defy him outright, but they all felt the fear in their hearts. Would the weapon succeed or fail? And if it failed, what would be left of them? The countdown began, echoing in the silent room. 10:09. 8 ... as the countdown reached. 3. Max felt a strange sensation in the pit of his stomach. Was this the right choice? His grip on the control panel tightened. There was no going back. The experiment was set to begin, and the launch of Deicide 1 would either prove humanity's superiority or mark the end of their civilization. Firing in 3, 2. Suddenly, the room shook, and the power readings surged. Shut down. Shut it down, Nora shouted. But it was too late. The weapon released its catastrophic energy in a blinding flash. For a split second, everything seemed to freeze. Then, the shockwave exploded outward, rattling every inch of the foundry, sending tremors through the decks. The ground cracked beneath their feet as the energy crackled and warped the fabric of space. Max stumbled backward, his vision blurred from the intensity of the light. The ship's systems screamed in alarm, the very walls groaning under the strain. Max! Nora shouted. She lunged to grab him as the room around them started to spin uncontrollably, but it was over almost as quickly as it had begun. The light dimmed, and silence fell as the emergency systems began to stabilize. The room was left in stunned quiet. Max slowly rose to his feet, the shaking subsiding. His mind was a whirl of confusion. He turned to Nora, his eyes filled with disbelief. Is it over? He asked hoarsely. Nora, still shaken, looked at the monitors. I don't know. Ian Cruz, who had managed to regain control of the systems, spoke up with a tremor in his voice. The core ... It's fine. The energy blast wasn't as destructive as we thought. His voice cracked with relief. The readings show no sign of a divine presence. No gods were affected. For a moment, Max thought he might collapse. But then something else caught his eye on the far monitor, a new, unusual energy signature. He frowned. Wait, Max said, pointing at the screen. What's that? Nora leaned over, her breath catching in her throat as she saw what Max had spotted. It was a faint ripple, a disturbance in the fabric of space. Faint, but unmistakable. That shouldn't be possible, Nora muttered. It's not. No. It's a reaction. Something's responding. Max's heart skipped a beat. What? Do you mean responding? Ian's hands flew over the control console as he worked to track the anomaly. His eyes widened as he confirmed what they were all dreading. It's a god. The energy signature is identical to what we recorded from. The orb Alex Reed showed us. It's reacting to the weapon. And it's not far. Max's face went pale. The gods had noticed. They weren't gone. They were coming. We have to shut everything down, Nora urged, her voice rising with panic. If they're responding to the weapon, we've triggered something we can't control. But it was too late. The disturbance grew stronger, the fabric of space vibrating with raw power. The very walls of the foundry seemed to bend and flex under the pressure of the incoming force. Max turned toward the control panel, a grim realization settling over him. We've opened a door we can't close, and now we must face whatever comes through it. The first step had been taken, and humanity's fate was now intertwined with the gods they had dared to challenge. The question was no longer whether they could defeat a god, it was whether humanity could survive what they had unleashed. 770 words. Asterisk. The awakening, the walls of Aegis Forge trembled again, this time more violently, as the disturbance in space continued to grow. The lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the control room as the hum of the foundry's systems intensified. Every monitor displayed an array of strange data, energy readings far beyond anything they had encountered before. Max Rowan stood frozen before the console, staring at the rippling energy signature. What's happening? He muttered under his breath. This shouldn't be possible. Nora, standing beside him, swallowed hard. That anomaly, it's growing. If this is a god, then it's reacting to our weapon. And if it's angry... She trailed off, the unspoken fear hanging in the air like a suffocating cloud. Ian Cruz continued typing furiously, trying to make sense of the data. I don't think this is just a reaction. It feels like it's hunting us. The energy readings are shifting. It's coming toward us, and it's powerful. Max clenched his fists. How long until it reaches us? Minutes, Ian replied. We don't have much time. Outside the foundry, deep in space, the disturbance was becoming clearer. A giant pulsating mass of energy formed, swirling like a storm in the void. It was immense, far larger than anything a human had ever seen. At its core, a shadowy, ethereal figure began to take shape, a being of unimaginable power. Its presence rippling across the cosmos like a tidal wave. Get Alex, Max barked, snapping into action. Now. Nora didn't hesitate. She rushed out of the control room to find the human envoy. Alex Reed had been locked away in a secure cell, but Max knew he was the only one who could help them now. He was the only one who understood the gods. In the holding cell, Alex sat on the edge of a narrow bed, eyes closed in deep thought. He had expected something like this, but even he hadn't predicted the response would be so immediate. The gods had felt the challenge, and now they were coming to reclaim their dominion. When the door to his cell opened, Alex looked up to see Nora standing in the doorway, urgency in her eyes. You need to come with me. Now, she said. Alex stood immediately, his face hardening with determination. They've started, haven't they? Yes. The weapon's discharge triggered a response, Nora said, leading him through the winding hallways of Aegis Forge. A god is coming, and we need you to tell us how to stop it. Alex's expression was grim. You can't stop it. Not with a weapon like that. It's too late. Nora's eyes widened. Then what are we supposed to do? We've unleashed something we can't control. There's only one way to fix this, Alex said, his voice steady. We have to Communicate with the gods, not fight them. But you have to be willing to do something that goes against everything you've worked for. Nora felt a lump form in her throat. What are you asking us to do? Deactivate Deicide 1. You can't control it. And if you don't stop it now, it will tear through this entire system. The gods will punish you for your arrogance. Nora hesitated, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She knew Max wouldn't agree. He had already sacrificed too much to back down now. Please, Nora, Alex continued. You still have a chance to undo this. You have to make them listen. With no time to waste, Nora led Alex back to the control room. She knew Max wouldn't listen, but she had to try. Max was already at the central console when Nora and Alex arrived. He looked up, his face grim. We're running out of time, he said. The god is approaching. I know, Alex said, his voice quiet but firm. And there's still time to stop this. But we have to deactivate Deicide 1. Max's eyes narrowed. You're telling me to stop everything? After all we've done, it's the only way, Alex said. You can't defeat a god like this. You can't control it. You've opened a door you can't close. If you try, you'll only make things worse. Max's hands shook as he gripped the console. But we've come so far. We've created something that could finally put us on equal footing with them. And you've underestimated them, Alex replied. The gods are beyond what you can imagine. They'll never let you win. Nora stepped forward, her voice soft but urgent. Max, we have to listen to him. We can't win this fight. Please, for the sake of the crew, everyone, let's shut it down. Max looked at her, his eyes clouded with doubt. He had come so far, and now it felt like he was standing on the edge of a precipice. He wanted to believe that humanity could defeat the gods. But the pressure of Alex's warning and the reality of the approaching danger began to sink in. With a heavy sigh, Max made his decision. Fine, shut it down. Nora quickly began to input the shutdown sequence, fingers flying across the holographic display. The energy surge from Deicide 1 began to subside, but not before a final deafening roar echoed throughout the foundry. The god was close. Outside the foundry, the vast figure of the god grew ever closer. The disturbance in space had intensified to a blinding light, and the stars themselves seemed to bend away from its presence. The ship shuddered violently as the very fabric of reality seemed to ripple under the strain. Max, Nora, and Alex watched in silence as the approaching entity neared its final destination, their world, their ship. Would shutting down the weapon be enough? Would the gods listen? And then, as the light reached its peak, something unexpected happened. The entity slowed. The space around it distorted, and for a brief moment, everything stopped frozen in time. It was a moment of reckoning, and humanity's future would be decided by whether they could face the gods or be consumed by them. Approximately equals 770 words. Asterisk the reckoning for a moment. The entire foundry stood in eerie silence, the crew frozen, watching as the god, or rather, the manifestation of its power came to a halt just outside the confines of Aegis. Forge. Its immense presence seemed to stretch across the very fabric of space, an impossible silhouette of swirling energy and darkness. It loomed in the distance like a cosmic titan, its power radiating outward. Warping the stars in its wake. Max Rowan, Nora Vance, and Alex Reed stood before the viewport, their eyes fixed on the unearthly vision. For a heartbeat, no one moved or spoke, as though the universe itself held its breath. The hum of Aegis Forge's engines seemed muffled, swallowed by the sheer intensity of the being's power. Alex was the first to break the silence. It's waiting, he murmured. It's waiting for you to make the next move. Max's voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. What do we do? How do we communicate with it? Alex stepped forward, his gaze never leaving the dark figure in the distance. You don't, not the way you think. This being doesn't speak in words, it speaks in actions. You've triggered its attention, but it's not here to fight. Not yet, at least. Nora stepped closer, her eyes scanning the readings on her console. The energy signatures had stabilized, but the god's presence still hung like a storm cloud, threatening to tear everything apart. So, what now? Are we supposed to wait? Alex nodded slowly. Yes, if we shut down Deicide 1 in time, there's a chance it will leave. It's testing you, Max. It wants to see if you're worthy of even existing in its presence. But there's something you don't understand about this weapon. It wasn't just a tool to kill gods. It was a challenge, a declaration. Max turned sharply toward Alex, his face hardening. A declaration of war? No, Alex replied, his voice calm yet filled with gravity. A declaration of your intent to be more than you were. The gods are not petty, but they are protective of their place. What you've done is the first step toward humanity's evolution, for better or worse. And now you must decide whether to retreat or to continue down this path. The silence in the room deepened as the reality of Alex's words sank in. Humanity had taken its first true step into the cosmic arena, and the gods were watching. But what did that mean for them? Was it too late to turn back? Or had they already crossed a line from which there was no return? Max stood motionless, staring at the god's glowing form in the distance. His mind raced, torn between the desire to protect his people and the weight of Alex's warning. He had created Deicide 1 to defend humanity, to make them powerful in a galaxy full of predators. But now the very weapon he had built was threatening. To undo everything he had worked for? I won't run, Max said, finally, his voice resolute. We can't hide from this. If the gods are watching, we have to face them. We will stand our ground. Nora turned to him, her face softening with concern. Max, there's no shame in retreat. If we stand our ground, we risk everything. A god isn't something we can fight, no matter how advanced our weapons are. But if we back down, now we lose everything we've worked for, Max argued. We'll never be seen as more than prey. We have to take control, not just for US, but for future generations. We have to show the galaxy that humanity will not be ruled by anyone, not even gods. Alex stepped forward, his expression dark. And if that's what you choose, then be prepared. The gods don't forget. If you challenge them, they will respond. But you've already provoked them. This isn't about choice anymore. It's about survival. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with the weight of the decision at hand. Max glanced at Nora, who nodded slowly, the reality of their situation settling over her. If we're going to survive this, she said quietly, we need to do it together. Whatever happens, we stand united. Alex's gaze softened slightly, but he still appeared concerned. You'll need more than unity to survive this. You'll need strategy and time. The gods may decide to test you in ways you don't understand. At that moment, the rooms. Alarm suddenly blared, cutting through the tension like a knife. The viewport trembled, and the lights flickered once more as the god's energy signature intensified. The being was reacting, its energy swelling, ready to unleash its power. The entire ship shook again, but this time, it wasn't just a tremor. It was an impending force of destruction. Shut it down. Nora shouted, rushing back to the console. Max, it's too late to stop it. We need to do something now, or we won't survive the blast. Max stood frozen for a moment, caught between the two extremes, retreat or fight. The god's presence seemed to stretch beyond the physical realm, touching something deep inside him. It was a feeling of insignificance, like standing before an overwhelming tide. But then something changed in Max's eyes. His determination hardened. No, he said firmly. We're not running anymore. We face this or we die trying. Nora's fingers flew across the console, trying to override the systems and prevent the god from fully materializing, but the energy was too strong. The ship's systems were overwhelmed, and then a voice deep and ancient resonated through every corner of Aegis Forge. It wasn't spoken in words, but in pure thought. You dare stand against us, mortals? The very air seemed to thrum with the god's voice, and the walls of the foundry shimmered with a strange, glowing energy. The entity was here. Its power was suffocating, its presence almost tangible. Max could feel it in his bones, as though The very universe was bending under its weight. For a fleeting moment, Max felt the smallest sliver of doubt. Had he made the wrong choice? Was humanity truly ready for this? But then his gaze met Alex's. The human envoy had said it before. There was no turning back. With a deep breath, Max raised his chin. We stand, and we fight. The final test was upon them. And now, humanity would discover whether they had the strength to face the gods, or whether their challenge would mark the end of them all. Asterisk. The cosmic trial, the air in the control room grew thick as the voice of the god reverberated through Aegis Forge. Every surface seemed to hum with energy, as though the very ship itself was alive with tension. Max Rowan stood at the center, his eyes fixed on the viewport, where the god's form loomed larger and more defined with every passing second. The god's energy continued to intensify, and the walls of the foundry groaned under the strain. Nora and Ian were furiously working the consoles, trying to stabilize the ship's systems, but it was clear that nothing would stop the cosmic entity from advancing. There was no turning back now. Max's heart raced, but his mind was clear. This was the moment, this was the test that would decide humanity's future. Would they rise to the challenge, or would they be crushed beneath the weight of something far greater than themselves? He turned to Alex Reed, who stood quietly by his side, his expression grim but steady. You were right, Max said quietly. The gods are real, and we've provoked them. But it's too late to back down now. Alex's eyes flickered with a hint of sadness. You've made your choice? Now, you must be ready to face the consequences. Max's jaw tightened. No, but we'll face it together. Humanity's future is at stake. I can't let us cower. Not now. The voice of the god echoed again, more powerful this time, as though it was speaking directly into their minds. You challenge us, mortals. You would seek to defy the ancient order? You are nothing but dust before us. Why should we spare you? The air crackled with immense power, and Max felt his knees tremble under the weight of the god's presence. The sheer magnitude of the energy was like nothing he had ever encountered. But in that moment, something inside him solidified. He would not bend. He could not. The god's presence was suffocating, yet Max stood tall, his voice steady as he addressed the entity. We are not your playthings. We are humanity. We choose our destiny. We will not bow to you. The god's energy surged, the light outside the viewport growing brighter, nearly blinding. For a moment, it felt as though the entire universe was closing in on them. But then a deep silence fell, a silence that seemed to stretch across eternity. The god was waiting. Testing them, Max held his breath, waiting for the god's response. Unsure if they had passed the test, or if they were about to face utter destruction. Then, unexpectedly, the energy began to shift. The overwhelming power began to retract, coiling back like a snake preparing to strike. The god's form began to dissipate, fading into the cosmos. For a moment, the threat of annihilation seemed to have passed, but the god's final words lingered in the air, not as a command, but as a statement of undeniable truth. You have challenged us, mortal, and for that you are marked. You will be watched. Remember this day, for it will echo across time. With that, the god's presence faded entirely. The walls of Aegis Forge settled, and the power readings began to normalize. The unnatural pressure that had been crushing the ship's systems began to ebb. The crew exhaled collectively, as though they had been holding their breath for an eternity. Max stood in stunned silence for several moments, processing the magnitude of what had just transpired. The ship was still intact. They were alive. But at what cost? What had the god meant by "you are marked"? Alex stepped forward, his expression unreadable. You have survived the first test, but the gods are patient. They will remember you. This is only the beginning. Nora let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. We did it? We survived? Max nodded, but his mind was already racing. The god had left a warning, and though they had survived, the danger was far from over. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity's place in the cosmos had been changed forever. We've only just begun to understand what we've unleashed. Max said quietly, his voice reflecting the gravity of the moment. But we've made it this far, and that means something. We may be small in the eyes of the gods, but we're not powerless. The crew began to stir, exchanging looks of disbelief and relief. They had faced the unimaginable and survived. But the questions remained. What would the gods do next? And what did humanity's survival mean in the grander scheme of the universe? Alex looked at Max, his eyes hardening. You've made your mark, Max, but the gods are never finished. They will come again, and when they do, you'll need more. Then weapons. Max's eyes darkened with resolve. We'll be ready. The galaxy is vast, but we won't be cowed. Nora's gaze turned toward the stars outside the viewport. The vast unknown stretched out before them. Humanity had been tested, and they had passed barely. But what lay beyond was still a mystery. Would the gods return in force? Or would humanity carve out a future among the stars, standing tall in the face of unimaginable power? The journey was only just beginning. Approximately equals 770 words.